C.J. Stroud is having a legendary rookie season for the Houston Texans. After getting drafted second overall, he's become one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league. And by winning a playoff game against the Browns, he joined a short list of rookie quarterbacks to win games in the playoffs. The truth is that the odds are still stacked against him, despite his talent. No rookie starter has ever led an NFL team to the Super Bowl. Very few have ever won a playoff game in the past, and even less have won two. But we want to pay homage to those who have. So in this video, we're going to tell the story of every rookie quarterback to win at least one playoff game in the NFL. Pat Haden, 1976. Pat Haden was the first ever rookie quarterback to win a playoff game in the NFL back when he was on the Rams in 1976. Following his prolific year at USC, Hayden opted to play professionally in England so he could attend Oxford University on a scholarship. His decision, as well as his lack of size and arm strength, took a toll on his draft stock, but the Rams still drafted him in the 7th round. Hayden earned a job as the third-string quarterback out of camp behind James Harris and Ron Jaworski. But both veterans got injured, which thrust Hayden into the starting role during the team's second game of the year. Hayden served mostly as a game manager that made limited mistakes, while his two running backs, Lawrence McCutcheon and John Cappelletti, shouldered most of the offensive load. Eventually, James Harris returned and took back the starting job, but ownership deemed him unhealthy to continue and gave the duty back to the rookie. Come playoff time, the Rams had an 11-3-1 record and were matched up against the Dallas Cowboys. Hayden struggled in his first playoff game, throwing for 152 yards, 3 interceptions, and only 1 touchdown pass, but thanks to his defense and running backs, the Rams squeaked through a 14-12 victory. However, Hayden struggled again in the second round. He threw 2 more picks, and the Rams fell to the hands of the Minnesota Vikings by the score of 24-13. Brock Purdy, 1985. Almost an entire decade passed before another rookie quarterback won a playoff game, and once again that player started for the LA Rams. In 1985, Brock Purdy, at age 34, became the oldest rookie quarterback in NFL history, a record he still holds to this day. Before he was signed by the Rams, Purdy played in the Canadian Football League, mostly for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. There he broke league records for passing yards en route to winning the league's Most Outstanding Player award in back-to-back seasons. When the Rams signed him, they immediately made him the team starter. The Rams had Eric Dickerson starting at running back, an all-time legend at the position, but Dickerson had to miss the team's first 2 games due to injury. Despite missing Dickerson, Dieter Brock led the Rams to wins in both games and continued the streak after he got back. Under the leadership of Brock, the Rams started the season 7-0. It was the longest winning streak for a rookie starter until Ben Roethlisberger broke the record in 2004 for the Steelers. By playoff time, the Rams had an 11-5 record and were matched up against the Dallas Cowboys in the first round. Brock barely had to do anything in that game because Dickerson rushed for 248 yards and 2 touchdowns on 34 carries and led the Rams to a 20-0 victory. However, in the second round, the Rams were overpowered by the Bears by a score of 24-0. Brock struggled mightily against the Bears' stout D, and that was it for Dieter Brock's NFL career. He suffered an injury in his sophomore training camp and then another while rehabbing. The second injury ended his playing career after only 1 legendary season. Sean King, 1999. After Brock, no rookie quarterback started and won a playoff game until 1999. At the time, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had Trent Dilfer as their starter, but they drafted Sean King out of Tulane University in the second round of the draft. King served as the backup until Dilfer suffered a season-ending injury mid-season. King took over admirably, leading the Bucs to a 4-1 record down the stretch and a division title. After a first-round bye, the Bucs were matched up against the Washington Redskins, who built up a 13-0 lead halfway through the third quarter. But King showed resilience and battled his team back into contention. Mike Alstott cut the lead with a third-quarter touchdown run, and then in the fourth, Sean King threw a touchdown pass to John Davis, giving his team a 14-13 lead in the eventual victory. But King and the Bucs struggled in the NFC Championship game, where they lost to the Rams by a score of 11-6. Aaron Brooks, 2000. The very next season, the New Orleans Saints started Aaron Brooks as a rookie quarterback in the playoffs. Well, if we want to get technical, then Brooks wasn't a rookie. Brooks was drafted with a later-round pick by the Packers in 1999 and served as the third-string quarterback behind Brett Favre and Matt Hasselbeck for 1 year, but didn't get a sniff of playing time. But following the 99 season, the Packers quarterback coach Mike McCarthy was hired as the offensive coordinator for the Saints. One of his first moves was persuading his new team to trade for Aaron Brooks, the guy that he had just spent the season coaching in Green Bay after noticing his huge potential. And when the team starter, Jeff Blake, was injured in the 11th game of the season, Brooks was thrust into the starter role. In his first game as a starter, Brooks led the Saints over the defending champion St. Louis Rams 31-24, which immediately put the league on notice. As a starter, Brooks led the Saints to a 3-2 record, and they finished the season 10-6 atop the NFC West. In his first playoff game, Brooks was once again matched up against the Rams. The Saints were missing their star running back Ricky Williams because of an injury and lost their number one wideout, Joe Horn, in the first quarter of the game. But that wasn't going to stop Brooks. Clearly, he had the Rams' number. Without his top two weapons, Brooks scorched the Rams by throwing for 266 yards and 4 touchdowns. It was an unbelievable performance by the youngster. However, the team's injuries were too much to overcome in the second round as Brooks and the Saints fell to the Minnesota Vikings 34-16. Ben Roethlisberger, 2004. In 2004, the Pittsburgh Steelers entered the NFL draft with the 11th overall pick. The two highest-ranked quarterbacks in most mock drafts were Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger, and both prospects were expected to get picked inside the top 5. But Phillip Rivers was surprisingly picked ahead of Big Ben, leaving the Miami of Ohio prospect available for the Steelers down in the 11th slot. Still, the Steelers coaching staff wanted to pick a guard out of Arkansas named Shawn Andrews. But the team's owner, Dan Rooney, overrode the staff and demanded they pick Roethlisberger instead. The decision was made because the Steelers had previously passed on Dan Marino in the draft, and Rooney didn't want his team to make the same mistake twice. Turned out to be an incredible decision. Even though he was highly touted, the Steelers wanted to patiently develop Roethlisberger instead of throwing him into the fire too early. But Charlie Batch, the guy the team wanted to start, was injured in the preseason. Then the backup, Tommy Maddox, sputtered in Week 2 against the Ravens, which led Bill Cowher to give Roethlisberger a shot. Big Ben was a revelation. As a starter, he went 13-0 for the Steelers and led them to a 15-1 record heading into the playoffs, the best in the NFL. In his rookie season, Roethlisberger threw for over 400 yards in 5 separate games, earning him the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year award. In his first playoff start, the Steelers matched up against the New York Jets. Roethlisberger was underwhelming in the game. He threw for just 181 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks, one of which was returned for a touchdown. The 181 yards were the lowest of his career as a starter, but the Steelers' dominant defense still managed to lead the team to a 20-17 overtime win. However, the defense couldn't steal another one for them in the AFC Championship game. The next week, Tom Brady and the Patriots overpowered the Steelers to the tune of a 41-27 win. Roethlisberger threw 2 touchdowns in the game, but also threw 3 interceptions, and one of them was brought all the way back for an 87-yard touchdown. Joe Flacco, 2008. The next quarterback to win a playoff game as a rookie was the guy C.J. Stroud beat, Joe Flacco. In 2008, the Ravens drafted Flacco in the first round of the draft out of Delaware. Much like their rivals in Pittsburgh, the Ravens wanted to develop Flacco patiently, but injuries to the quarterbacks ahead of him on the depth chart made Flacco the starter going into Week 1. At the time, the Ravens had one of the most dominant defenses in the league, so Flacco wasn't expected to do much. In the regular season, Flacco passed for 2,971 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Though the numbers don't sound great, they were good enough to get the Ravens into the playoffs with an 11-5 record. And in the first round against the Dolphins, Flacco continued his winning ways with mediocre stats. He only completed 9 passes in the game for 135 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and never got sacked. He did, however, run the ball in from 5 yards out in the fourth quarter to put the game on ice. Then, in his next game, Flacco did something that no man had ever done before. He won consecutive playoff games as a rookie. Once again, Flacco wasn't setting yardage records. In fact, he only threw for 161 yards in the game, but one of those passes went for a 48-yard touchdown to Derek Mason. On top of that, Flacco continued to make no mistakes. He never threw an interception or got sacked for the second game in a row. And when his team needed him most, he managed to get the Ravens into field goal range and let his kicker, Matt Stover, punch through a 43-yard field goal to give his team a 13-10 win. Unfortunately for Flacco, he fell apart in the NFC Championship game against the Steelers. His 141 passing yards were once again mediocre at best, but this time around he also threw 3 interceptions. The last one came with just over 4 minutes left in the game and his team trailing by 2 points. And Troy Polamalu took it all the way back for a 40-yard touchdown to end Flacco's historical run. Mark Sanchez, 2009. It only took 1 year before another rookie came in and tied Joe Flacco's brand new record. And in hindsight, it's surprising that this guy holds any records because he wasn't very good at all. We're talking about Mark Sanchez. The Jets drafted Sanchez with the 5th overall pick in the 2009 draft. And the USC product earned the starting quarterback job coming out of training camp. The Jets didn't look like much of a threat at all through 10 weeks. Following a loss to the Patriots, New York had a record of 4-6. But the defense turned up the heat down the stretch. Sanchez was far from great, but he led the Jets to wins in 3 of their next 4 games. Then in the team's final 2 games of the season, both the Colts and Bengals rested their starters, which allowed the Jets to win both games and make the playoffs with a 9-7 record. In 15 games, Sanchez only threw for 2,444 yards with 12 touchdowns, while also throwing 20 interceptions. Not very impressive at all. But to his credit, Sanchez played decently in his first playoff game. In the first round, he went 12 for 15 with 182 passing yards, no interceptions, and a 45-yard touchdown pass to tight end Dustin Keller. The Jets beat the Bengals 24-14 to go on to the second round. There, the Jets would play the Chargers, and the defense led the way again. Sanchez threw for 100 yards and 1 touchdown, but also added a pick. Still, the Jets snuck away with a 17-14 win and were shockingly going to the AFC Championship game. The win made Sanchez the second rookie QB ever to win 2 playoff starts, but that's where the miracle ended. In fairness, Sanchez wasn't the problem in the final game. He threw for 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick, but his defense couldn't slow down Peyton Manning and the Colts' dynamic offense, which led to a 30-17 defeat. T.J. Yates, 2011. 2 years later, another unlikely candidate joined the list. His name was T.J. Yates. The rookie was drafted by the Houston Texans in the 5th round out of North Carolina and was slated to serve as the team's 3rd stringer. But after both Matt Schaub and Matt Leinart suffered injuries, the Texans decided it was time to stop giving guys named Matt opportunities and handed the ball over to TJ. As a starter, Yates wasn't particularly good, but the roster had plenty of other weapons such as J.J. Watt on defense, Arian Foster starting at running back, and one of the league's best receivers in Andre Johnson. And even with all the talent on his roster, Yates and the Texans still lost 3 straight games before going into the playoffs with a 10-6 record. In the first round, the Texans matched up against the Bengals, who were also starting a rookie quarterback in Andy Dalton. So a rookie was certain to join the aforementioned shortlist. And Yates and the Texans earned the win. Arian Foster was unbelievable with 153 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, while J.J. Watt scored a pick 6 to give the Texans the lead going into halftime. In the second half, Yates threw a 40-yard touchdown pass to Andre Johnson to secure the Texans' first ever playoff win by a score of 31-10. The next week, however, wasn't quite as fortunate for Yates and the Texans. Up against the Ravens' defense, Yates was completely outmatched. He threw for 184 yards and no touchdowns while getting picked 3 times en route to a 20-13 loss to the Ravens. Russell Wilson, 2012. By this point, starting rookies at the quarterback position was becoming more and more frequent. And 1 year after Yates won for the Texans, another rookie won a playoff game, the 4th rookie in a 5-year stretch. This time it was Russell Wilson. Wilson was part of a star-studded quarterback draft class that also consisted of Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III at the top. Wilson, on the other hand, went in the 3rd round to the Seahawks and put up the most surprising rookie season out of the 3 of them. The Seahawks had just signed Matt Flynn out of free agency to be their guy, but Wilson stole the job in training camp and ran with it. In his rookie season, Russell Wilson threw for 3,118 yards, 26 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions. His 26 touchdown passes tied Peyton Manning for the most all-time as a rookie. and his 100 passer rating broke the rookie record previously held by Ben Roethlisberger. But he never actually held the record because Robert Griffin III had an even higher passer rating that same year. And lo and behold, the two rookie stars matched up in the first round of the playoffs. RG3 was forced out of the game with an injury after building up a lead, leaving the Seahawks the opportunity to come back. And they didn't disappoint. Wilson threw for 187 yards and a touchdown, while adding 67 yards on the ground to secure a 24-14 win for Seattle. The next round, the Seahawks found themselves in a barn burner against the high-flying Atlanta Falcons, led by Matt Ryan. Wilson did everything he could in the match. He threw for 385 yards and 2 touchdowns, while adding 60 yards and a score on the ground as well. The Seahawks scored 3 of their touchdowns in the fourth quarter and even took their first lead with 31 seconds left in the game. But with his back against the wall, Ryan led the Falcons into field goal range, and Matt Bryant hit a last-second field goal from 49 yards out to give the Falcons a 30-28 win and send Wilson home. Brock Purdy. After Wilson, no rookie quarterback won a playoff game for over a decade until Brock Purdy did it last year for the 49ers. Much like a few of the other names on the list, Purdy wasn't expected to be starting come playoff time. He was drafted in the 7th round out of Iowa State, and the team had 2 guys ahead of him on the depth chart in Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. Lance, the highly touted prospect, was given the job out of camp, but he was injured in the second game of the season. The injury forced the 49ers to go back to Garoppolo, a guy they were trying to move away from. But a midseason injury to Garoppolo opened the door for Brock Purdy, who instantly proved to be a better solution at the position. Purdy started the last 5 games of the season and immediately started putting up MVP-caliber numbers. He threw for 1,374 yards, 13 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions to lead the 49ers to a 5-0 record storming into the playoffs. In the first round, Purdy continued to shine by throwing for 332 yards and 3 touchdowns without throwing a pick. He also added a rushing touchdown for good measure. The performance led his team past the division rival Seahawks and into the second round, where he played against the Dallas Cowboys. Against the Cowboys, he didn't throw any touchdowns, but he didn't throw any picks either. He let the offensive line and defense lead the way, which proved to be a successful formula. Purdy and the 49ers won 19-12, and Purdy became only the 3rd quarterback in history to win 2 playoff starts, joining Joe Flacco and Mark Sanchez. As he entered the NFC Championship game, Purdy had the chance to make history as the first rookie quarterback to ever lead his team to a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, he got injured in the fourth quarter and was replaced by Jimmy Garoppolo. Without Purdy at the helm, the 49ers got blown out by the Eagles 31-7. As you can see, that if history serves as any indicator, the odds are against Stroud to lead his team to the Super Bowl, but that doesn't mean he can't do it. As we mentioned, the kid's loaded with as much talent as any other rookie to start for their team. But we want to know what you guys think. How far will CJ Stroud lead his team this year? Let us know what you think in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more sports news and insights.